Welcome to Trail TMZ. We've got carnage at Western States. We've got a sports whistleblower. And on top of that, we've got controversy with Aravaipa Running. Formerly my favorite race organization. Are they still? Stick around and find out. So let's start out with our top story. In fact, our person with the most Instagram followers, because that's how we gauge our stories here. So Jim Walmsley has dropped out of Western States. Hayden Hawks has dropped out of Western States. And Jonathan Ray has dropped out of Western States. At the same time, Killian just threw down like a 6-hour 50-miler with 7,000 feet of gain. So obviously someone is prepared to win this, but the real story comes from Free Trail. Dylan Bowman, they decided to quit any progress in filming Unbreakable 2. If you don't know, Unbreakable is a film about Western States when the top runners at the time, it was like Jeff Rose, Anton Kupitschka, Hal Kerner, Kilian Jornet was there. So they made this movie about it. It was an amazing cult classic. You can watch it on YouTube. It's called Unbreakable. And this year they were going to make an Unbreakable 2 because you had David Roach, you had Hayden Hawks, you had Rod Farvard. I don't know why he's in that same discussion, but you also had David Roche.
That is incredibly exciting.
And you had, I don't know, Killian's back this year. You have Vincent Bouillard, who won UTMB. So you have all these characters who are incredible runners, and they were going to be racing each other.
That is incredibly exciting.
But then a couple of them have gotten hurt. We have Jim out and we have Hayden out. And apparently that's all it takes for Dylan to pull the plug. But I hate this. It is so stupid. Free Trail and Dylan just need to stick with some projects and actually make films about them and also do it the right way. So they tried to film Courtney at Cocodona 250. She dropped at mile 110 or something. So that film's out. Then a couple key figures of this Unbreakable 2 thing drop. Then they're not going to film that. It's like, you got to just stick with some of these things. You can't have the Second Nature podcast, the Free Trail podcast, making a movie about every event, going to New Zealand, covering everything. This kind of thing frustrates me because it's just like, you could be putting out great content that people love, but you're just like pulling the plug. Why can't it be Unbreakable with the characters that are actually there? It is just kind of lame sometimes when you see people just like quit when it doesn't go their way or it's hard, when literally the sport of ultra running is about facing adversity and pushing through it. So that is my opinion on Unbreakable 2, that someone should be covering the front of Western States every year because it is that important and interesting to enough people. And I think the main reason that it's frustrating to me is that any film project should not be tied to one or two different names. Like, of course, if it's a film about Courtney, it can't work if Courtney's not there. But a film, especially in the trail running space or the adventure or the outdoor space, is about filming and telling the story of what happened. And you could tell the story of Unbreakable 2 by saying that these people have become broken. They were not unbreakable even leading into the event. You could cover their training, say what happened, even little things like that, and then cover what happens out there. I think it's still going to be a really interesting event, but it's not just about the race day, the 14 hours that people are running out there. It's about a lot more than that goes into ultra running, and I think it's really missing the boat by pulling the plug immediately when Jim drops out of Western States. So that's just a bit infuriating because any good movie and film, and been a part of a few of them, revolves around a storyline. And the fun and amazing thing about this sport and making films and storylines through these races is you don't know the storyline. You start filming and you present the story to the audience as it unfolds out there. And with these things, these are part of the storyline with people dropping out. So kind of lame. Hopefully they still film something, but it does not sound like they are. That's my spiel on that. Let's move in to our next topic. So Camille Herron is a sports whistleblower.
You can't go in there! It's okay! I'm a limo driver!
She said so herself in a response to a comment on her Instagram. So I don't really know what this term is, but it sounds like it's a new profession that you can have. So if you are looking for a job in this sport, check out sports whistleblower. So what is the genesis of this controversy? Because she posted a very cryptic post. So here we go. I share this. Wow. Let's see. All right. There's a lot here to unpack in this post. So let's just read it. I've held back from speaking for a long time and for reasons beyond my control, but the harm has continued. I'm sharing what I feel safe to share right now. I appreciate everyone's patience and understanding until more details and truth comes to light. This week has been especially difficult as I've watched misinformation persist, our sport and athletes continuing to be harmed, and the truth remaining unheard. Last summer, I filed reports with the IAU and authorities about serious rule violations and inappropriate behavior by certain individuals. Instead of accountability, I've faced retaliation, public falsehoods, and fear. So number one, we are against bullying on this podcast. All we do is we take information out there and we present it in the lightest way I can, even though this isn't a light story. I was bullied in high school for, I assume, no fault of my own, maybe the weirdness I have or the way I looked or something. We don't want to do bullying on here. All we're doing is presenting stories. So, and opinions, because we're allowed. All right, she says, I want to speak up and raise awareness, so that's good, and stop the ongoing harm. The hard thing about this post is we just don't really know anything about what's going on. And so she signs her name. She says, to those who believe the false narratives last year and abandoned me, I forgive you. And this is the line that is hard to read because it feels like everything was proven to not be a false narrative last year. Like the Wikipedia scandal where her partner, supposedly not her, was editing Wikipedia entries on her competitors and saying they weren't as good as they actually were. That seems like a pretty real narrative that was proven by, I believe it was Canadian Running magazine. So that's a hard thing to go with. And also, like, what are we supposed to know or believe or be fighting against or join forces with? Because we don't quite know anything about what's going on. And then a new post, she says she's been through 14 record ratifications, 18 drug tests, blah, 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 and come to learn these things about drug testing. So I believe that her main issue is that drug tests were not done immediately after a record was set. And so it just goes on and on and on. And all I've got to say is our original thing, fighting on social media, is not worth it. We go back to the Candace Burt thing where she was fighting with the video or the live stream camera person, the live streamer who was going to live stream Arizona Monster. And then she told people to attack him. She posted his Instagram account and his name so they could find his address and told people to report him to the police. So as a podcast, we are against social media feuds because they just don't end well and they look terrible. So Candace had 200,000 followers. The guy that was going to run her live stream had 1,000. And so it was like an army of 2,000 against 1,000. And his 1,000 were probably mostly like family and friends. So it just always feels like an unfair place to have battles like these. I don't know how you should put it out, but I would say going to Runner's World or something like that might be a better scenario, or maybe an interview style where you can put things out there. Dylan Bowman seems to love to interview people on the verge of contentious situations, like Stian Angerman, who tested positive for doping. He went on the Free Trail podcast. I mean, I asked Camille to be on the podcast way back during the Wikipedia scandal days, and it was a no-go. So I think you just can't post these cryptic things online. People make fun of LeBron James and stuff in the greater NBA sports world, like 100 times bigger than our little niche. And I think that there should just be a little bit of this, like, what is the benefit of posting this here? Will this solve issues, or is this more remember me type thing? Like, how are the people reading that actually going to do something from social media? I just think there's so many better ways. There's literal publications like Outside would probably interview her that can, get something in front in a reputable way and will ask the right questions versus crafting your own narrative on social media. So that leads to our second to last thing, our one lesson of this, and it is everything you read on social media is going to be the most biased thing you ever read. There's no two-way thing. People just put out what they want to put out, and that is it. And we don't know anything about, I have no inside scoop on what Camille is facing, what she's battling against, or anything like that. But I just want to point out, I think this is not the right way to do it. All right, on to our last story. My former favorite racing company, Aravaipa. Are they still my favorite? Let's dive in and find out. Okay, so back at Black Canyon, 100K, I was out there filming with Derek. You can watch our recap video. It's pretty awesome there. And what happened is about the halfway point around Deep Canyon Ranch, Scott Trayer runs down the descent into Deep Canyon, and he's yelling like an Aravaipa racing team got unauthorized aid outside of the aid station. And it's like, whoa, I don't know. Is he like kind of joking or saying something, or is this like a big serious thing? Because it's hard to know. It's like 40 miles in, the heat contention of battle. And then Ferdinand runs by and, don't know too much about what's going on. Fast forward to a day later. So Ferdinand, let's give a little background. He's a great runner. I paced him a year ago at Black Canyon. I believe he was top 10. And this year, I think he might have been top 10 again, or 14th or something like that. Right around there, 10th or whatever. But I paced him, so I know him fairly well. He's a magician, lives in New York. He trains in Kenya sometimes. And he just won Canyon's 100-miler. So after the race, hear that this was actually a serious issue and that he may have cut the course as well. And so, I'm in no position of power. I just have a little inside information here. And it's like, okay, I think he actually cheated, but there might be more to the story. So find out that the cutting the course means he missed a turn, and then to get back to the course, he cut across the desert. It's against the rules, but yeah, we've all missed a turn and that sucks. So maybe that's how he was going to deal and decide that. And then the getting unauthorized aid is he forgot to leave an aid station with his water bottle. So I believe it's either his wife or his girlfriend. Don't need to throw another name out there, but she drove up and gave him back his water bottle because he needed it for the next section. And so unauthorized, yes. Against the rules, yes. And so by the end of it, when all this comes to light, he's assessed a 20-minute penalty. So that is all wrapped up, right? Aravaipa, it's all good. And I'm like, I don't know. Cool. It went from like 10th to 14th. But I didn't know all this was going on in the background. And apparently something might have happened at Canyon's 100-miler as well, which he won. But it sounds like this was not a satisfactory punishment and did not go along with the race guide that Aravaipa put out, the runner guide on what you're allowed to do. It basically said, cut the course or receive unauthorized aid, that's a disqualification. And that didn't happen. It was more of a 20-minute penalty. And so Scott Trayer to social media. So back to what I said, social media is always the best place to air your grievances and make world-changing posts. So I'm sure we're seeing that a lot now in the political climate.
That is incredibly exciting.
So always, before you talk to your loved ones or anyone you have an issue with, post about it on social media. That's what we say. Okay, that was a joke. That was sarcasm. But Scott posted about this because apparently the issue was never really wrapped up satisfactorily. In 20 minutes, I kind of agree, doesn't seem right. And then Aravaipa posted that it's like the spirit of the rule and the discretion type thing. But then the end of the day, after it was out there, Ferdinand ended up getting disqualified. I think it was a little messy how it was dealt with. And the main issue here, and what people have an issue with, is that Ferdinand is on the Aravaipa racing team, so it felt like a conflict of interest to only assess a 20-minute penalty, which I get both sides of this, but I think at the end of the day, the right thing probably happened. It's an ultra marathon, so they're covering 2 miles, 100K, 62 miles, so there's not like race officials out there every step of the way. It depends on runners reporting and creating a fair and equal environment to race in, so I don't think Scott did anything wrong, and I think when he reported it, the following the rules that were stated in the runner's guide, the hard thing is that they were not followed through completely, and it might have felt like a conflict of interest why they acted that way and did not completely disqualify him. And when Scott ran out of options, he posted on social media, and that ended up creating the full acknowledgement and full adherence to the rules. So he has been disqualified. So that is our final story of Trail TMZ. Thank you for joining for this long segment, but It's always fun to dive into the trail world. Hopefully I didn't cancel myself once again. I want to talk about one more thing today. So Greg Sankey, who is the head of the Southeastern Conference, which is a massive football conference, if you know, like Alabama, LSU, Texas is in there, Florida, all the schools who are big in football. Now, bear with me. We're going somewhere with this that'll relate to everything going on. So he addressed that the SEC, especially for football, doesn't need the NCAA. So what does that mean? Well, if they left, then probably the Big Ten would leave, which is like Michigan, Michigan State, all the big schools in the center of the country. And then there's like Oregon involved in that. And then other conferences would leave the NCAA. And you know what? Football makes all the money for these other sports, whether it's like golf and there's like wrestling, there's tennis, there's all these college programs, including running and cross country, that are driven and floated by these revenue generating sports. And that's mostly because of the TV deals and things like that. But if these sports left the NCAA and the revenue sharing wasn't so regulated between the sports, then things like Title IX might disappear, or the fringe sports that, you know, can't afford to fund themselves and are subsidized by the university through means of like football and athletic programs selling things like merch and season tickets and TV deals, then we're going to see like running programs go away. And then what do kids do when they're 18 of college age, but can't really run at a true big college for that competition? So I don't know the answer, but I think it's just a really interesting, just thought-provoking question of, if the funding disappears, if the equality in men's and women's sports, if there's less pressing on that, and if if it's actually just a sub-professional league, and there's less pressure for all these other sports to even exist, what's going to happen to them? So I know trail running, there's professional trail runners, obviously, but will any of them be coming out of college if you can't even run in college anymore? And the ability to get a college education through a sport like golf or tennis or running or cross country, whatever it may be, if that doesn't exist, how is that going to impact the level of people coming into, whether it's track and field or cross country or trail running even, or ultra running? I think it's just going to be a really interesting time when these sports are now paying athletes to, like football players, especially quarterbacks on, say, like LSU, an LSU quarterback, he left LSU and went to UCLA because he wanted to make more money, because now that they can make money from their name and likeness, then you can jump schools like that. And they're going to want to start getting a bigger piece of the pie. If, say, football brings in $100 million, they're going to want a bigger piece of that instead of that piece going to fund other sports. So I think it's just a really interesting time in the NCAA, and to be a young athlete where opportunities and ways to go and do your sport in college is sort of that transition ground where you learn and have a professional coach and stuff, and that entryway into whatever you may do, whether it's cross country or track and field or hobby jogging or moving into trail running. I think this is actually going to affect the elites and the top tier of the sport a lot more than we know. I don't know any answers on what's actually going to happen, but I think it could be really weird and interesting if the biggest moneymaker of colleges no longer is so attached to colleges or regulated in the same way. All right, that is all I have this week. I'm going to do one more Cocodona recap episode next Monday, and so that should be a good one. This show is brought to you by Janji, JANJANJI.com. Their shorts are amazing. I actually have a pair, I realized, and I've had it for like 4 years. I've worn it for 4 different years of Cocodona. So that's how good their stuff is. It lasts forever. It's got great pockets. Check it out. Tell them I sent you. And then Garage Grown Gear, I use that site for everything. They have food on there. We had Luke Pearsall on, who started Trail Goods Co. which probably the best freeze-dried meals I've ever had, except for my own. I have a branded meal with ReadyWise, but that's sold on there. So you can get anything from ultra running stuff to backpacking to fast packing to hobby walking, hiking in the neighborhood. You can get a headlamp there, garage grown gear, and then CS Coffee, csinstant.coffee for all your premium freeze-dried coffee needs. Actually, it's really good stuff for backpacking. It'll just make that morning wake up a little bit nicer. All right, I have a lot of travel. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks and then more time after that all summer, but I should be able to keep these going. We will see how the Trail TMZ concept goes as far as keeping that up with the news. All right, that's all I got. Stay elite, my friends.
And we don't know anything. To everybody listening, just go out and embrace your own science experiment.
I found these balloons in the middle of nowhere, and I'm trying to suck the helium out.